Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is City Talk. He has been affectionately called a crank, a scold, a public nuisance, and an inspirational curmudgeon, an ink-stained fetch. He's a New York City treasure, a chronicler of his city, a teller of tales, a reporter of lives. And his latest is from Penguin Lives. It's titled Branch Rickey. He's Jimmy Breslin, Pulitzer Prize winner, losing political candidate, a Queens guy. In his latest, Branch Rickey, he revives a story of enormous consequence, a story many times told, but he tells it like no one else. It's one New York legend remembering another. Jimmy, welcome back.
Good.
I loved it. You can write.
I wrote about lives. The
Yes.
way you said it, it sounded like lies.
Wait a second. My wife said the same thing, and she couldn't figure out.
Then why didn't you do what she said?
Oh, I'm sorry. See, well, do you listen to Ronnie?
I protected myself.
Okay, I'm sorry. Lives. You know, I'm from Queens.
Yeah.
You, Hemingway, and Elmore Leonard. I laughed at this book, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I smiled constantly. I constantly called out to my wife and said, Bob, you got to hear this one. So I'm just going to quote a couple. You described baseball on page 6. Baseball was a sport for hillbillies with great eyesight. Then we turn to cities. You talk about St. Louis. St. Louis at this time had the most inept baseball players gathered in one place since the invention of foul lines. Yeah. Brilliant.
It did.
Okay. Jersey City and Chicago. You talk about Jersey City. It is one of 2 American cities that describe their civic philosophy in 2 words. Chicago's is, where's mine? And Jersey City's, not guilty. How do you do this?
It's true.
Well, we're not talking about the truth. How do you think of this stuff? How does it come out?
A couple of words, but it's true. It's Jersey City. They're not
You're just
long, complicated sentences.
No. I get it. Talk about the book. How did you come to write a biography for Penguin on Branch Rickey? They came to you?
Yeah, they called me up and asked me to do a book, and it was a short book, and I would do it. That style. There have been a couple of comments about how slim the product was. Well, they asked me to write a short book. I come out of tabloid newspapers. If you want something short, I'll give it to you short. And that's what I did. But the story is short, and I'm amazed that most of these other jobs that were done didn't seem to see what it was. What it was when he took black and put him in a baseball, Rickey did, alone, by himself. He did it with George Mclaughlin from Brooklyn. I got to give him a blow.
Wait a minute. Wait a second. First of all, you have to talk about the meeting between Branch Rickey and Mclaughlin. Give me the whole deal.
No, well, George Mclaughlin, I always knew from dinners where he'd stand there with a drink in his hand. And he owned a lot of the Dodgers, his bank, George. And
he was known as George V because he drank.
George V.
You love drunks. Go ahead.
That was he said that's my name, George V. A glass in his hand. But he was not for blacks. Don't worry about him. But Rickey said he wanted to put this black in a baseball. And then he described to Rickey how they could make a fortune of money with it. That changed his attitudes on race in an instant. And the first thing that Mclaughlin began to talk is, how are we going to do this? That took care of that.
So
he wanted it in.
And in this case, the green trumped the fear of the black.
He didn't care after that. After that, he cheered for the black. But it was a thing that nobody knew about it. Rickey was the one that really knew it. He was going to put a black in a baseball.
Now, why? I mean, you say that Rickey was neither a savior nor a Samaritan. He was a businessman. Talk about, that's what was different about this book, as well as the great writing, was that perspective.
Came out of Ohio Wesleyan, Methodist, Baptist, these people, and he had it in him. He was going to do it. He thought it was God's work. He really did. Aside from everything else, he saw that the second reason was he could fill the stands with blacks to see him play. He's not a dope.
And also, he could get these great black ball players to stock his team.
Get everything.
I mean,
but
go ahead.
First, he had to break the number one problem in America, which was race. So he amassed a pound of paper on who the black players were, and it was Jackie Robinson was all he kept reading and hearing about. So he sent Clyde Sukeforth from Maine out to Chicago to talk to this Robinson, and Sukeforth went there, and he didn't know one black for the other, and he didn't care which came over. He had absolutely no concern over color at all. He just wanted to know, where is Robinson? He
Right.
didn't know which one he was. So another player on a black league game at Comiskey Park pointed out Robinson, and Sukeforth called him over and said, "How would you like to come to Brooklyn with me? Rickey wants to talk to you." And Robinson listened to the guy talk and saw there's something in this guy. The guy doesn't care that I'm black.
Right.
That he really wants to.
And Robinson was a smart guy, graduated to UCLA.
He was everything, but he could see right away Sukeforth struck him, this guy's on the legit.
Right.
So he went to Brooklyn with him. He stayed overnight here at the hotel in Harlem, and he came down in the morning, and he met Sukeforth on Monaco Street, and they went upstairs, and Rickey sat in there, three of them. Sukeforth sat in the corner of the room, and Rickey said to Robinson, "Do you know why you're here?" And Robinson said, "Yeah, to play for some black team, I guess you're starting." Rickey said, "No, that isn't why you're here. You're here to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers." Well, he went into shock, and then he was there for 4 hours as Rickey threw punches at him and called him names and got him used to the hatred he was going to face and dispel. And after which he signed him and said, "You can't tell anybody about this until World War II was over, so we can operate in a sensible."
And Robinson was a vet too.
Yeah,
a
but
lieutenant.
the one thing is we can't have a commotion over a black player coming in a baseball with the war still on.
Uh-huh.
So then the pastor at the Protestant church on Askin Avenue in Forest Hills was lifted by the Army. Rickey lived at Greenway North. So what he did was he picked up in Forest Hills, in the gardens, he picked up his missal, which he had, and he walked to church on Sunday and got up in the pulpit, and there were all white women there. There were no men. They had all been drafted.
Uh-huh.
The church was on the up. There were no draft dodgers. They all went in. So he did Sunday sermons. Well, after a couple of them, he was running out of his praise of God or reason for it. And he told them he was going to put a black in the baseball. That would be an act pleasing to God on earth. And they listened and listened, and he told them they couldn't talk about it until after the war, so we could not disturb anything. And they all said yes, they agreed not to talk. So they left the church. And they were the only white people, the only people outside of Rickey and George Mclaughlin
who knew what was happening.
Who knew they were going to put a black in the baseball.
So you've got Branch Rickey with, he's a visionary. And in some sense, he's a great civil rights leader.
That was more than civil rights. the day that Robinson put his first foot with spikes on a baseball field, Major League Baseball field, the American spectacle baseball was shattered and changed forever, and the country was changed forever, and eventually, over the year after year, the world was changed. The largest single act of our time.
Wow.
Putting Robinson in.
Wow. I mean, and really, I mean, even though he's recognized, when you put it in this sort of that grand historical perspective,
Well,
this
it
is
was.
really a real turning point.
It was.
And then Rickey not only brings in Robinson, he brings in Roy Campanella,
and
Don Newcomb,
well,
and then Junior Gilliam, and then he stocks his team with all these great black ball players, and then the Dodgers become a dynasty.
Yeah, and he stocked his pocket out of that.
Okay, talk about. So there's the visionary, and then there's the, in a sense, who completes the job of the abolitionist, and then there's this other guy who you claim created something that looked like Southern slavery, and that was what? The farm system.
Farm system. They didn't have it. It was a farm system. Each of these teams could have farm systems in other cities, small towns, with team players in it. And they were signed to contracts. And as they were being signed and this thing was being set up, Rickey was surprised to see there were no agents for these players. You mean when they get paid, when they're sold, nobody's there to supervise it for their part and take 10% of it, which I will do to make up for this absence of an agent. And he took the money.
So he creates the farm system, makes a ton of money.
10% makes the money.
And
Sure.
then also, wait, before he gets to the Dodgers, he creates a dynasty with the Cardinals.
Yes.
I mean, they win, what, 6 pennants and
right.
4 World Series?
Yeah.
Okay, why does he leave St. Louis? I mean, he's just beat the Yankees in the World Series, and then he comes, is it only because Brooklyn is the only place that can be integrated in the whole United States?
No, but the one that he got here, he saw it was the place where you could do it.
Okay.
It was the opening day of the first game that had a black player on the Dodgers. They had 14,000 blacks in the audience.
So he knew that. I mean, this is economic. He's a good businessman as well as this.
Absolutely,
this
doing
visionary. He did well by doing good.
Absolutely.
Talk about. Did you ever meet him?
Yes, I saw him. Yes, I do.
What?
A little bit.
Under what
I was a young
circumstance?
kid when he was around here. I mean, what was I? 14, 15 years old.
So you didn't know him as an adult?
I went to a football game at Ebbets Field in pouring rain. It was they had the Brooklyn Dodgers had a professional football team.
Right.
And they were playing the Chicago Rockets, as I recall, in a heavy rainstorm, and no people were there. I went with Rusty Weil, a friend of mine from grammar school. We were in grammar school together. And we're in there, the upper tier, good seats because there was nobody. We were there. And he came and sat behind us and spread a big blanket over him because it was a cold, wet night, and said, "Hello, lads." Us would say hello. And then they said, we know about football here, right down the street here. Go straight down, we're telling Rickey, straight down Flatbush Avenue. That's where Sid Luckman came from. Mm-hmm. Erasmus Hall High School. We knew that type of thing. And he said, "Did he?" "Oh, yeah, that's where he came from." He went from Erasmus Hall High School. He went to Columbia, which didn't count. He's now with the Bears, where it counts. Chicago Bears.
Now, did you know it was Branch Rickey when you were talking?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you knew it?
Sure. And, but what we didn't know was this was making him furious to hear it, because that was in his territory, and they swiped the best football player the Lord ever made, and he didn't get him. And these boys are proud of where he is. And he got mad. He got surly. He didn't want to talk.
Now, this picture on the front of the book, is that the man?
That's a knockout. The two people that worked in the publicity department or the art department at the publisher came with the usual pictures of Branch Rickey for the cover. And I didn't like them. They were boring. And then one day they spent 10 days working day and night, and the publisher said they came in with this picture, this one here, and I took one look at it and I said, I don't like it, don't like it. I knew it was
That was the cover.
It was taken by, it's got a story to it.
Go ahead.
George Silk of the Associated Press took the picture. George Silk was a prisoner of war in World War II. He was captured during the war, and then he's back here in New York working as a photographer at Associated Press, and he took that picture. And then he stopped taking sports, he moved into sports because he didn't want to be around if he'd stayed as a George Silk, they would have sent him to another war or something, which he didn't want. He had enough of that. And he went and took sports pictures, one of which was this. And it is the picture. Great picture.
Okay. You write a lot about sports writers and sports writers at the time. And in fact, you call the Baseball Writers Association a fake and a fraud.
Yeah.
And then you point to some of the folks that I read as a kid, Jimmy Powers in the Daily News and Joe Williams,
the worst,
who were constant in their critiques. Why?
I know them.
Why? What was it?
Race.
Totally.
Yes.
Did they know any black people? Why? It's just the endemic racism of the time.
Where's Joe Williams come from? Memphis.
That's true. You can't. Sometimes you can't get away from your environment.
And the crime is Joe Williams' ability to write. He had enormous ability, and he just let it all go down the drain.
What was the general mood of the writers as the communicators of all this?
They didn't even bother with blacks. Nobody was only. Nobody.
Were there any journalists out there who were?
That it started every time if you mentioned the journalists that would change it, they were reviled, and they were young, just starting or something. Or it was a Murray Kempton. I mean,
right.
They come once in 100 years.
Right, and you work with Murray at Newsday.
Yeah, Murray was, forget it, he was the best. You had a couple here and there, but the main number of people who put out sports pages were racist. That's all. So the whole newspapers were too, but this in particular was sports.
So what was the reaction of the fans in Brooklyn? My mother's a Brooklyn Dodger fan, and we grew up with her, much to our chagrin. He was accepted by the fans, the Brooklyn fans, not necessarily the fans in Pittsburgh or Chicago. Was that true?
Yeah, well, because the owner of the team was pushing him, Rickey, and that put removed a lot of the stain from the proposition. He did it right.
Okay, and then but you did have Dixie Walker and the famous petition, which
you had players, but they were no better than anybody else.
Or no worse.
They didn't like him. No worse, no better. Against, and that ended over time.
Now it ended because why?
Because the guys here and I signed a contract to play for this team, and they told me he's going to play second base, and told me to behave and like it, and that's what I'll do.
And show the courage not to fight.
Yes.
Okay, let me just read one of your just perfect vignettes, and it's early in the season in April 1947, and it's Ben Chapman, the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies, and he yells out, "Hey nigger, go back to the cotton fields where you belong." And then Jimmy Breslin. Jackie Robinson, in one of his first times to bat as a Brooklyn Dodger, walks pigeon-toed to the batter's box. His face shows nothing. He fights to keep down everything he ever believed. If hit, hit back. Can't do that now. When challenged, smack first. Can't do that either. Insulted, call them on it, right in their faces. No good either. I can't even turn my head to look at him, Robinson thought. If I see him, I'm not going to be able to stop myself. I don't know how you could sort of capture how Robinson might have felt with than that.
But that was, Rickey did that the day he met Robinson and had him in the office.
And he worked him over.
He spent 4 hours calling him a black.
Right, and
throwing punches at him.
Right.
Yeah. Because I neglected not to point that out immediately upon sitting here. That was the key to his mentality, Rickey. He could see what was going to be and what this guy had to do to overcome it. And Robinson was smart enough to accept what he was told by Rickey.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me about Rickey is his brilliance as a strategist.
Oh,
as you just said, he could look so far ahead and then work backwards.
Oh,
I mean,
he was
it's
smart,
just unbelievable.
Very smart man.
Yeah,
Very
I mean,
smart man.
the way, and one of the glories of this book is that in a very compact way, you really point out what a brilliant strategist he is in all of this as well. Now, does he do it, you know, does he do it for God? Does he do it for God, or does he do it for Caesar?
This was the work he was
This is
working
both.
for God. But he went from there back to the St. Louis Cardinals, and the Stanley Musial, the pitcher, fine pitcher, came up with a bad arm, and he couldn't, and he was having trouble pitching. And Rickey just said, well, told the rest of them, don't worry about it. We're going to use him. He's the best hitter you ever saw.
Right.
If he doesn't pitch every fourth day, we'll play him every day with his bat. He could see in that sport. That was.
Is there anyone in your recollection that, as a baseball mind and general manager and owner, who was as influential and as foresightful as Rickey?
Tell me anybody in politics who thought what he did. In government, who did you have that could think like that?
Not too many, I would say. I can't think of any offhand.
What president ever saw put a black in like this?
Well, in terms of what you said before, you're right, Jimmy. I mean, you know, he is a civil rights hero.
You had big United States senators from the state of New York, here where we're from. Name one of them that came up with a stance like this. Nobody. This man was way ahead of anybody. It was the single most important act in the history of this nation.
Wow. Wow, you're pushing it.
It was.
You're pushing it, but okay.
Well, what are you going to do?
No. I mean, I would certainly agree that it's in terms of civil rights and changing American society.
It changed your grammar schools.
Okay.
I mean, everything changed as a result.
I was there 7 years later when the decision came through. Okay, let me just read again. I'm reading.
Yeah.
Historical document. You're talking about it's the greatest historical thing. Well, this may not be the Gettysburg Address or the language of the Board of Education, Brown versus the Board of Ed, but you quote the document. And the quote is as follows. The Brooklyn Dodgers today purchased the contract of Jack Roosevelt Robinson from the Montreal Royals. He will report immediately, Branch Rickey. And you argue this is it. This is a great, you argue this is a great American document.
Yeah, he put a black on baseball on Bedford Avenue. I got to say, I am not overselling his act, Rickey, and pushing Robinson. I'm not overselling.
You got the last word. I'm buying it. You've got an acolyte. I'm in your side.
Well, what would you have had without it?
I agree. I think it is an historical event.
A different country, a different grade school. When you look around, everything.
Okay, now we're really going over. But wouldn't somebody else have done it? Why didn't the other general managers do it?
Nobody became famous for agreeing even with it.
Yeah, but the baseball owners voted 15-1 against them. What was wrong with them? They didn't see this?
It was 15-1. It became, Rickey voted to put a black in baseball. Then one guy in the crowd, Leo DeRocha, immediately put up his hand. I'm with him to put a. He had been vociferous against blacks, DeRocha.
Okay.
The minute he saw the vote, and here's why he did it. He says, I'm with Rickey.
Because he was a contrarian.
And then he turned to the scout, and he says, get to Montgomery, Alabama, and get that Willie Mays, his name is, and bring him back here tonight.
What about folks like Larry Doby, who comes in a month later.
Yeah.
They sort of got those blacks, the ones who followed
Yeah.
Robinson, never took the abuse, but never got the acclaim that Robinson
Well,
did.
he was first.
Yeah, and then that's it. I mean, I remember
it.
stories about Larry Doby in the American League of
Everybody was
facing-
fine, but the door was open for them.
And then you had, as we said, Roy Campanella. And then, but the Boston Red Sox don't have a black ball player until
New
when?
York Yankees waited for how long?
Well, I guess it was
4
Elston
years?
Howard, I
3
guess.
years, something.
Yeah,
Everybody
long
waited.
time. But the Dodgers, though, created a dynasty with their black ball play. Campanella won 3 MVPs, Don Newcomb, all of those folks.
Right.
What's next for Jimmy Breslin? What are you writing next? Come on.
Well, I'm supposed to do a book on the Blago.
Blagojevich. Oh, but he's your type of character.
Yeah, except it got held up because I have to have his case, which now starts mid-April.
Right.
Finally.
Right.
See what happens there.
Got
And
it.
I've been doing while waiting, I've been doing a fiction book, which I like best.
Ooh, wow. Mobsters?
keep going.
Priests?
No, just keep going.
Baseball? Come
I
on.
don't know what it
You don't know what it is yet? No. You got characters?
Yeah.
Plot?
Yeah, everything, I think.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell us anymore?
No, I just, it's a kid here got killed in Afghanistan, and he was supposed to marry this girl here in Rosedale.
Ooh.
Queens. So we'll just do something there.
My
We'll
mother
see
lives
what
in
happens.
Rose. Okay, we'll have to stop there. Next week, we'll move uptown to talk about the 1961 Mantle Maris home run race and all things Yankees with sports writer Phil Pepe. Join us on CUNY TV. Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.TV. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.